Hi everyone, I'm Heather Wen, a retired nurse practitioner and the founder and practitioner at Arizona Healing Alternatives. Stay tuned on this channel because we're going to be covering a lot of issues that impact your health. It's important to me that whether you use Western medicine or alternative medicine, I'm passionate about you knowing what your options are. For today's aha moment, we're going to be talking about heavy metals. And I'm not talking about rock groups. I know that was a bad joke, so sorry. But basically what we're going to be talking about is heavy metals. Are they good for us? Are they bad for us? Are there options if they're bad for us? What do we do about it? So stay tuned. So when you think about it and you think about heavy metals, there are some metals that are actually good for the body. Like we take zinc if we're going to get colds, or there's copper, there's other different ones that aren't so much of a problem. But are metals even a problem? Well, let's think about it. Even in Western medicine terms, let's take one like lead. Lead was oftentimes in people who, myself, I grew up, I was born in the 60s, should I admit to that? But basically, when I was growing up, there was lead in gasoline, because now we have unleaded gasolines, things like that. There was lead in paint, these sorts of things. And what they found along the way in Western medicine even was that there can be a buildup sometimes of these heavy metals in the body that can actually be poisonous to the body. So for example, with lead is a really good example. With lead, they found that kids, there were several kids that were having mental functioning problems or delays. And they found with that many times, as one example, there was lead poisoning. And when it came to lead poisoning, that's what happened with a lot of the outcry and things like that, which is why in 1978 they banned lead, started unleaded gasolines, and they banned lead because it was so toxic and bad for the body. So there are several other metals, and mercury. Many people have heard about mercury, especially in the dental field, where they were putting mercury in fillings, and there were some problems. Now, some people, they'll say there's an association with problems, and some they won't. But ultimately, in a lot of biological dentistry practices, or in some dentistry practices now, many times they don't use metals in fillings or different types of metals that are easier on the body. Well, so what's the problem? What kind of problems can it cause? Well, the first problem can be, like we discussed, the problem with sometimes there were mental delays or problems or deficits in people that were exposed to lead paints or things like that. That's one of the things. But there are sometimes now in alternative circles where we're finding that metals, what do they do? What do they cause? Well, I don't know of any studies with this, and maybe there are some, but many times metals attract stuff to them. So what stuff? Things like bacteria, fungi or yeast, viruses, things like that go along with heavy metals. Well, how do we know that's true? So you may want to turn off the video at this point or fast forward, because I'm about ready to give you an example from my own life that shows about bacteria and metal and this sort of thing. And it's kind of gross, so you might want to fast forward in this. But the example is, I had a patient who actually had pneumonia. And when I was taking care of this patient, what ended up happening was that, and I'm so sorry once again, what ended up happening was I was walking past, the person sneezed, and my mouth was open. Okay, I'm so sorry about this. But the taste in my mouth was very metallic. Okay, as gross as that is, and no, I didn't get sick afterward, but basically it was a very metallic taste to it. Really gross, washed out my mouth, whatever the deal is. So that was all the proof I needed that metals attract to them bacteria, they attract to them yeast, they attract to them viruses, things like that. So sorry about the grossness, folks. But when it comes right down to it, so if you've got metals and sometimes they're in fat, they're stored in different areas of the body, is that really a problem? Well, not necessarily. It just depends on what's going on in your specific body and what's going on for you. So that being the case, it's interesting because in a lot of alternative fields, like especially naturopaths, will end up with taking heavy metals and doing what's called chelation. So what they'll do is oftentimes it's an IV, or sometimes it's an oral medication. And even actually in Western medicine, when they had those cases that were really, really bad, when it came to lead poisoning and things, there are agents, there are medications, life-saving medications even, that can bind up those heavy metals and get the body to excrete it, okay, and get it out of the body. So when it comes to that, now naturopaths too have ways of dealing with. So now we're going into obviously treatment options. What would happen is people may end up feeling really poorly, whether it's fatigue, whether they're having chronic medical conditions or different things like that. And I'll do another video about you never have what you've got, because it's a very fascinating thing to me. It was Viktor Frank's saying, the inventor of Total Body Modification. It was one of his sayings that you never have what you've got. But ultimately, if you're in a naturopath's office, they'll oftentimes do it via IV. Sometimes they do it orally with medications to give you agents that actually bind up those metals and, similar to Western medicine, get it out of the body. And chelation is really tough, folks. Let me tell you, when it comes down to doing that, it's really tough. In the medicine that I do in Total Body Modification, there are ways to harmonize the body to metals, because even if you chelate or get rid of the metal, eventually we have heavy metals in our water and our food. And even the warnings that they give for pregnant women. I remember doing prenatal care, we would tell people, women who are pregnant, not to eat a lot of fish because of the mercury content. So heavy metals are everywhere, folks. But once you get them out, oftentimes many symptoms will resolve and go away, and it's amazing. But of course, they're going to build up again, but it depends on the person as to how long it takes and whether it causes problems. And in fact, I think somebody said that when they're autopsying people and their kidneys are just because the kidneys are the main filtration system to try to get heavy metals out. But oftentimes the kidney is supposed to be really light and up here, but is really heavy, being weighed down by those heavy metals. And that being the case, they found that the kidneys are lying a lot lower when they're doing autopsies, which is kind of an interesting aside. But either way, if you're planning on doing chelation, once again, it's not for the faint of heart, because as those things are coming out of the body and they start coming out of the body, a lot of symptoms can happen, because what do they have attached to them? So a lot of symptoms and problems can show up, but there are ways around that, and naturopaths have that. And what I do, we would harmonize the body to it, because you're going to build up more metals anyway. So we harmonize the body so it hopefully doesn't see it as foreign. But we're also heading into categories of being able to dump it out, even in what we do. And it's fascinating, but there's lots of things, like I said, it's not for the faint of heart, because as you start getting rid of these heavy metals, what will end up happening is sometimes you can get sick, sometimes it will increase symptoms that you've had and make things worse before things get better. But either way, when it comes to metal, like I said, there are some good things that we take and good things that in nutrients that we need in metals, but there are some metals that can cause a great deal of problems. And so with that, I would definitely encourage you, if you have chronic conditions, if you have issues that are coming up, to definitely check with your practitioner, whether it's a Western practitioner, a naturopath, people who do applied kinesiology like I do in Total Body Modification. Talk to people about what are options when it comes to metals, and is it possible that what I have is related to a heavy metal problem. Thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to leave comments, and I'll be happy to answer them. Please also like this video if you like it, and you can subscribe so that you'll get other videos when they come out. Take care, have a great day, and let's only use heavy metal for music if that's what you choose to do. Have a great day. Bye-bye.